No, that coincidence wasn't random. What if that weird thing that just happened wasn't random? You know the moment. You're thinking about someone you haven't seen in years, and bam, their name pops up on your screen. Or you're stuck on a decision, and then you overhear a stranger say exactly what you needed to hear. Coincidence? Maybe not. Carl Jung had a word for this: synchronicity. Those eerie moments when the outer world seems to line up perfectly with your inner life. He wasn't just talking fluff either. In Synchronicity and the Causal Connecting Principle, Jung argued that meaning doesn't always follow logic. It follows symbolism. And here's the kicker. He believed the universe speaks in symbols the way we speak in words. You just forgot how to listen. You've been trained to brush off anything that doesn't fit the script, to label strange events as coincidence, so you don't have to deal with what they might mean. But maybe, just maybe, the world isn't as random as it looks. Maybe there's a kind of secret conversation going on between your unconscious mind and reality itself. Yeah, trippy, right? And here's the twist. Jung believed these moments aren't caused by anything in the usual sense. They're connected by meaning, not cause and effect. That's why they feel like signs. Because they are. So next time something gives you chills for no good reason, don't dismiss it. Ask why now. Ask, what is this pointing me toward? Because once you stop calling it random, you might start to see the pattern. And that changes everything. Ready to dig deeper? Let's talk about what your dreams have been trying to tell you. Society dismisses signs as delusions. Ever notice how quick people are to shut you down when you say something felt like a sign? You mention a strange coincidence or a vivid dream, and someone hits you with, "That's just your brain making stuff up." Boom, case closed. That's how modern culture works. We worship logic, data, what we can measure and replicate in a lab. Anything outside that? Fantasy, delusion, woo-woo nonsense. But here's the thing. Older traditions didn't think like that. Not even close. Indigenous cultures, ancient philosophers, mystics, they all understood the world as layered with meaning. The outer world and the inner world weren't separate. They spoke to each other. And dreams, omens, symbols, those weren't dismissed. They were decoded, respected. Carl Jung warned us about this split. He said the modern mind had become cut off from the symbolic language of the psyche. In trying to be rational, we've amputated half of our awareness. We've been trained, yes, trained, to ignore the whispers of intuition, to mistrust anything that doesn't come with a spreadsheet or a citation. But the psyche? It doesn't speak in bullet points. It speaks in myth, in metaphor, in gut feelings. And when we ignore that, we don't get smarter, we get numb. Think about it. How many things have you brushed off because you were afraid of seeming crazy? How many inner nudges have you silenced because they didn't make sense? That's not clarity. That's conditioning. And it might be costing you a deeper connection to yourself and the world around you. But here's the good news. You can relearn the language. And it starts with your dreams. Carl Jung and the reality of synchronicity. So here's the big question. What if those coincidences you keep brushing off are actually messages, not from some magical force in the sky, but from you, from your unconscious. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, a fancy word for something deeply human. It's when two events connect, not because one caused the other, but because they carry the same meaning. Let's break that down. Say you dream about a black owl, and the next day, you see a black owl painted on a stranger's jacket, or you're wrestling with a major life decision, and out of nowhere, three different people bring up the exact issue you're stuck on. That's synchronicity. It's like the unconscious is reaching out through the world around you to say, pay attention. Jung saw these moments as more than weird flukes. In Synchronicity, a causal connecting principle, he argued that the psyche and the external world are linked by meaning, not just logic. And that meaning shows up when you're ready to see it. That's why déjà vu feels so uncanny, why the same number keeps popping up, why a song hits different when you're going through something. And no, this isn't about superstition or manifesting your way to success. It's deeper than that. Carl Jung believed your unconscious knows more than you do, and it uses symbols, dreams, and synchronicities to guide you toward wholeness. So next time life taps you on the shoulder with something oddly specific, don't just shrug it off. That might be your unconscious handing you a clue. And if you learn to follow the thread, it just might lead somewhere real. Let's talk about how this shows up in dreams, because that's where it gets really wild. The unconscious speaks in symbols. Ever wonder why certain images just hit you? A snake, a storm, a mother's face. They don't just mean one thing. They feel bigger than that, like they're carrying something ancient. That's not random. That's the unconscious speaking, and it doesn't speak in plain English. It speaks in symbols. Carl Jung believed your personal unconscious, your private dreams, fears, memories, rests on something deeper, the collective unconscious, a shared psychic inheritance, like a blueprint passed down through every human who's ever lived. And within that blueprint, archetypes, universal figures in themes, the hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the trickster. You've seen them in myths, movies, your own dreams. They show up over and over because they live in us. When you see a symbol out there in the world, a strange animal crossing your path, a sudden image that won't leave your mind, it might not just be coincidence. It could be an archetype rising, a moment where the inner world breaks through the surface. Jung called this a bridge between the psyche and reality. And that bridge? That's where meaning lives. Think of it like a dream bleeding into your waking life. It's not always literal, it's symbolic. But that doesn't mean it's any less real. In fact, it might be more real than the surface stuff we obsess over. Emails, errands, small talk. So here's the challenge. Are you willing to listen? Not just with your ears, but with your intuition. Because once you start seeing symbols as symbols, everything starts to shift. Next, we'll explore one of the most powerful symbols your psyche can throw at you, the shadow. Your shadow is trying to talk to you. You ever get triggered by something way more than you should? Or you keep bumping into the same kind of person, the one who pushes every button you've got? Yeah, that's not just bad luck. That's your shadow trying to talk to you. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is everything you've buried, the parts of yourself you were told were too much, not enough, or just plain wrong. Anger, fear, desire, creativity, stuff that didn't fit the script you were handed. so you stuffed it. But here's the truth. The shadow doesn't stay quiet forever. It leaks out. Through projection, through patterns, through weird signs that seem to stalk you until you finally listen. Shadow work isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. That uncomfortable coincidence you can't shake, that dream that won't leave you alone, that's not madness. That's an invitation, a flare sent up from your unconscious saying, hey, there's more to you than you're letting in. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So if you're feeling like you're falling apart, maybe you're actually falling into yourself. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about facing yourself. And yeah, it's messy. It's uncomfortable. But it's also where real growth begins. Because once you stop running from your shadow, you start reclaiming your power. And the place where your shadow shows up the loudest? Dreams. Let's go there next. Because they're not just random movies in your head. They're maps. The hero's journey starts with a sign. Every great story you've ever loved, it starts with a sign. Not a perfect plan, not a to-do list, a disturbance, something weird, something that doesn't fit. Think about it. Harry Potter gets a letter delivered by an owl. Neo sees the white rabbit tattoo. Frodo inherits a mysterious ring. In myth and film, this moment has a name, the call to adventure. And it almost always comes in the form of a sign, something unexpected that jolts the hero out of the ordinary world and into something deeper, something unknown. Jung saw this not just as myth, but as psychology. Because you're the hero of your own story, and the signs you're seeing, they might be the beginning of your journey. Not just random glitches in the matrix, but inner signals saying, it's time. Time to grow. Time to face something real. Time to step into who you actually are. But here's the catch. In every story, the hero resists the call at first. They say, this can't be happening, or I'm not ready. Sound familiar? That fear, that doubt, totally normal. But if you ignore the call for too long, life gets loud. The signs get stronger. The synchronicities start stacking. The inner pressure builds until you have to move. So if something strange is tugging at your attention, don't brush it off. That might be your letter, your rabbit, your ring. And if you say yes to that call, the journey won't be easy, but it will change you. Next, let's break down how to spot the signs when they show up, because most people miss them entirely. But be careful, not every sign is sacred. Okay, real talk. Not every strange thing that happens is some sacred cosmic message. And if you treat every flickering streetlight or repeated number like it's divine intervention, you're not waking up, you're getting lost. Jung warned about this. He didn't want people turning synchronicity into some magical excuse to avoid reality. He believed signs can be meaningful, but only when they're grounded in self-awareness. If you're not doing the inner work, shadow work, emotional honesty, reflection, then following the signs can quickly become just escapism with flair. Here's the danger. When you start wanting every coincidence to mean something, you stop seeing clearly. You're not decoding symbols. You're projecting your hopes and fears onto the world and calling it guidance. That's not insight. That's delusion dressed up in spiritual language. You've probably seen this play out. People who chase signs into toxic relationships, impulsive life changes, conspiracy rabbit holes. That's not intuition, that's avoidance. Jung believed real synchronicity comes when your unconscious is aligned with your conscious integrity. That means checking yourself, asking, why do I want this to be a sign? What part of me is being activated? Am I seeking truth or comfort? Because here's the paradox. The more grounded you are, the more clearly the symbols show up. The more you're willing to face the uncomfortable stuff, the fear, the uncertainty, the more accurate your inner compass becomes. So yes, the world does speak in symbols, but it's not here to flatter your ego. It's here to help you grow. Now let's get practical. How do you actually work with synchronicity without getting swept away by it? Decode the pattern. Reclaim your power. So you're starting to notice the signs. Good. Now what? This is where things get real. Because synchronicity isn't just about spotting cool coincidences. It's about decoding the pattern and using it to reclaim your power. First step, pay attention to repetition. If a symbol, number, phrase, or even a feeling keeps showing up, don't ignore it. Write it down. Seriously. Start a journal where you track dreams, weird moments, emotional spikes, even songs that hit you harder than they should. You're not just collecting data, you're building a personal symbol map. Next, notice your emotional reactions. Did something random hit you in the gut? Make you tear up or twitch with anger? That's not just mood, that's a mirror. Your unconscious uses feelings like highlighters. If it stirs you, it's speaking to you. Now look for themes. Are you always dreaming about water? Seeing wolves? Running into people who challenge the same insecurity over and over again? That's a pattern. And patterns are where meaning lies. But here's the key. Don't just ask, what does this mean? Ask, what part of me is this pointing to? Synchronicities are clues, not commandments. They're not here to tell you what to do. They're here to help you see what you've been avoiding, hiding, or neglecting. The more you decode, the clearer the conversation with your psyche becomes. And that's where your real power lives. Not in controlling the signs, but in understanding what they're reflecting. Ready for the final piece? Let's talk about how all of this points toward something even deeper: transformation. This is your mind trying to wake you up. What if the weird stuff that's been happening isn't just random noise, but a wake-up call? Not from the universe out there, but from your own mind. Your unconscious. The part of you that's always watching, always listening, and knows when you're stuck, sleepwalking, going through the motions. Maybe you've felt it. That creeping sense that something's off. The repeated dreams. The symbols that keep chasing you. The emotional gut punches that seem to come out of nowhere. That's not coincidence. That's your psyche turning up the volume, trying to shake you out of autopilot. Jung believed the unconscious doesn't just sit there quietly. It guides you, nudges you. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it throws a brick through the window of your comfortable little routine. Why? Because it wants you to wake up. Not to some airy spiritual idea, but to who you really are beneath the scripts and masks. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people ignore the signs. They numb out. Scroll past it. Call it crazy. Stay busy so they don't have to look too closely. And then wonder why they feel disconnected, anxious, stuck. So here's the challenge. Are you willing to listen? Not to me, not to some guru, but to yourself, to the voice beneath the noise. The one that speaks in dreams, in chills, in patterns that keep repeating until you finally ask, what am I not seeing? Because once you start listening, really listening, everything begins to shift, and that's where the journey actually begins. Start seeing the world symbolically. Here's the final twist. Jung never asked us to blindly believe in signs. He wasn't telling us to get lost in magical thinking. What he did ask was something way more radical. Start seeing the world symbolically. That doesn't mean giving up logic. It means adding another layer. When something strange happens, a dream, a pattern, a gut reaction, you don't just shrug and move on. You engage. You ask, what does this mean? Not out there, but in here. What part of me is being mirrored, challenged, called forward? That shift in perception? It changes everything. Suddenly, life stops feeling like a disconnected series of random events and starts to feel like a story, a dialogue, a mirror. And no, it's not always comfortable. When you open that symbolic lens, you're gonna see parts of yourself you've buried. Fears, desires, shadows. But you'll also find power, the kind that doesn't come from controlling the world, but from understanding your place in it. Jung believed transformation begins the moment we stop asking, is this real? And start asking, what's this trying to show me? So no, life isn't just a puzzle to be solved. It's a mystery to be lived. And once you start seeing symbolically, you realize the world has been speaking to you all along. Now the question is, are you ready to answer back?